In the year 565 AD, a man was attacked by something in the water. And according to the story, the only thing that stopped it was a single command, and it listened. So, what exactly was this creature? What was the command? And why did it listen? Okay, so before we get into this, I need you to understand a couple of things about me. Ever since I can remember, I have been a why person. Like, from as early as I could talk, I was asking why. Okay, but why? And not in a cute way either. I mean, questioning authority, questioning rules, questioning the way things are and why they are that way. Which I'm sure it was super fun for like teachers and my mom, like anybody that had any kind of care over me. Not that I was a bad kid, and I did listen to the rules, but I needed to know why the rule was the rule in the first place. But I was never the type to just accept anything because someone said it was true. I always needed to know the why. What is behind it? Where did it come from? And why does it actually make sense for this to be a rule? So I think I was probably in like fifth or sixth grade, and I distinctly remember sitting at our old family computer. This was like back when the computers were huge, like the size of like an air conditioner unit. And I just remember sitting there, probably like no parental anything around me, but just like on my computer, probably on like some sort of a PowerPoint or something like that back in the day. And I remember making different PowerPoints about my conspiracies and why I thought that the conspiracies were real and why you should question this and different things. Like, of course, it was probably fifth or sixth grade level research that I was doing, but it wasn't cute little like fluffy pink hearts presentations. It was like, is the Loch Ness Monster real? And people have seen Bigfoot, and the Illuminati is trying to kill us, and secret societies in America that are ruling over everybody, like that kind of stuff. And I like genuinely thought that by making these PowerPoints, I was going to expose them. I felt that not enough people really knew about this stuff. And honestly, I think like back then, there wasn't really a lot of people that actually knew about this stuff. Now today, I think I'm not saying everybody believes in it, but I think people probably know about them now. And I was just fully convinced that one day, like, people were going to remember me as being one of the first people to like ever talk about it, right? Or try to expose it. But I specifically remember making one, which would have been probably my first PowerPoint that I made. And I was like, there's no way this is fake. So today we're going to talk about the Loch Ness Monster, which I know seems really silly, but I wanted to start out with like where it all kind of came from. And the further on we go, the more real it's going to get and the more crazy it's going to get, and probably like you're probably going to believe in a couple of them that I'm talking about. So today we're going to look at the history of the Loch Ness Monster and try to figure out, like, do we agree with this or do we not? And my mind is always open to these kinds of things because I believe in spiritual stuff too, like demons and angels and things like that. So this time, instead of probably just like Googling pictures and I don't know what I was doing back then, we're gonna do some actual deep dive research on the Loch Ness Monster, and I'm sure others have done this before. But I just felt I owed it to myself to go through this and try to figure out why I even believed it back then, because I don't remember. So welcome to the first episode of Question Everything. And this episode is entitled Loch Ness.
Just zoom in a little more. To the left. there, back of him. That's handwriting. Oh my god! Did you see that?
The Loch Ness Monster, often called Nessie, is said to live in the Loch Ness, a freshwater lake in the Scottish Highlands. And this is not just any lake. The Loch Ness is about 23 miles long, about a mile wide, and at its absolute deepest point, it's around 755 feet deep, which makes it the largest body of fresh water in the UK by volume. Not surface area, but volume, meaning there is a ton of water in there. Enough water, in fact, that the entire population of England and Wales could be submerged in it. But what makes Loch Ness especially interesting isn't just the size, it's the visibility, or lack thereof. The water is extremely dark and murky because of high levels of peat. So once something goes under the surface, you're not seeing it again. Now, the earliest recorded account of something unusual in the water dates back to 565 AD. This comes from a text called Life of Saint Columba, written by a Domnan, which might be a poor pronunciation, an abbot about a century later. So already we're dealing with a secondhand account written decades after the event, so we're just keeping that in mind. According to the story, St. Columba was traveling through Scotland when he encountered locals burying a man, and they told him the man had been attacked and killed by a water beast in the river Ness. Later, Columbus sends one of his followers into the water, which, that's a bold choice and kind of like a messed up thing to do, since the man supposedly passed away by a water beast. And as the man was out there risking his life, he went out swimming, and the creature appears again. The story says that the Loch Ness rushed towards him, and it was about to attack. And Columba did something very specific. He raised his hand, made the sign of the cross, and said, "Go no further, do not touch the man, go back at once." And the creature stopped and retreated. And I want to pause there for a second, because whether you believe this or not, that is not described like a normal animal encounter. That is described like something that understood a command and the sanctity and power of God and obeyed it. It sounds like it was something demonic to me. So from the very beginning, the Loch Ness story isn't just big thing in water. It's something unknown, something that's pretty responsive, and something that could possibly be controlled. Now, fast forward over 1,000 years, and things get very 1930s. In 1933, a couple named George and Grace Spicer reported seeing something crossing the road near Loch Ness. Not in the water, but on land. They describe it as a large animal with a long neck moving awkwardly. And this is important because it's one of the first modern descriptions that matches what we think of as the Loch Ness Monster. Around the same time, a new road had just been built along the lake, which meant more visibility, more traffic, and more people looking at the water. So suddenly, sightings start increasing. Then newspapers get involved, and once newspapers get involved, things escalate. By 1934, we get the most famous image of the Nessie, or the Loch Ness Monster, in history, called the Surgeon's Photograph. It was taken by a man named Robert Kenneth Wilson. It shows a small head, a curved long neck rising out of the water, And for decades, this was considered the best evidence we had of Nessie. Like this photo, carried the entire conspiracy on its back until 1994, when it was revealed to be a hoax. A man named Christian Sperling confessed that it was a toy submarine with a fake head attached, and they staged it in the water, which honestly is very disappointing, but kind of impressive to fool that many people. But even after that was exposed, sightings didn't just stop. Over the years, sonar scans, underwater cameras, and even DNA studies have all tried to figure out what's in Loch Ness, and still nothing definitive. What could it be? The most famous theory is that Nessie is a plesiosaur, prehistoric marine reptile with a long neck, flippers, and it lived, quote, 200 million years ago. And visually, it matches the description almost perfectly. If you believe in dinosaurs, of course. The problem is, the plesiosaurus were air-breathing, saltwater creatures, and the Loch Ness has been described as freshwater and landlocked, meaning there's no way a population could survive there. Also, if it were a breeding population, there wouldn't just be one. There would be multiple animals, which raises the question, where are they? There's also a theory that it's a very, very large eel. Now, the eel theory is taken pretty seriously because eels do live in Loch Ness and they grow way, way larger than expected. So in 2019, a DNA study of the lake found a lot of eel DNA. Not enough to prove a giant monster eel, but enough to say something long and moving in the water is here. It could absolutely be an eel, which again, somehow feels worse than a dinosaur. Then you have the natural explanations. Loch Ness experiences something called seeches, basically internal waves under the surface combined with boat wakes, temperature layers, and floating debris. You can get movement patterns that look alive. And the human brain is really good at turning weird shapes in water into this is a creature. But let's go back to the beginning of this whole entire video, because the very first encounter was not scientific, if it was true. It was spiritual. A command was given, and something obeyed it in the name of the cross. In my religion, which is Christian theology, there are references in the Bible described as Leviathan, which is actually a demon, but it's described as a powerful, untamable, and beyond human strength dragon type of sea beast. It is in the book of Job, and something that represents chaos and something that humans simply cannot control. So really quickly, I just wanted to throw in a Bible study that I do on a regular basis. Her name is Kanoi, and she's wonderful. I will link her Bible study down below. She does one every year, and it's like a couple chapters every single day for the whole entire year. So thank you, Kanoi.
Leviathan. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook or press down his tongue with a cord? Who's Leviathan? We've heard of him before. Well, let's take a look here. His name literally means twisting one, and he is believed to, at some point, have been a crocodile, perhaps the blue whale, or some sort of water dinosaur. I also have written here other references to Leviathan in the Bible if you want to do a deeper dive on who this creature is, but we're just going to take it at face value that it is indeed indeed some sort of sea creature. Can you put a rope in his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook, like a prisoner of war? Because you will see other references in the Bible of piercing the jaw with a hook in reference to those prisoners. Will he make many pleas to you? Will he speak to you soft words? Will he make a covenant with you like a peace treaty to take him for your servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird or like a pet? Or will you put him on a leash for your girls? Will traders bargain over him? Will they divide him up among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hands on him. Remember the battle. You will not do it again. Or in other words, you will regret if you try to contend with this beast. So you are basically powerless against him. Behold, the hope of a man is false. He is laid low even at the sight of him. No one is so fierce that he dares to stir him up. Who then is he who can stand before me? Who has first given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. So God is saying, I made Leviathan. None can even stand against him, and therefore none can stand against me.
Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily Leviathan, but historically, deep waters have always been associated with the unknown, danger, and things beyond control or understanding. And the idea that something exists that isn't exactly categorized is not new or unheard of. So, with all that being said, I guess the question is, where do I land? Do I think there's a prehistoric dinosaur that just is casually living in a Scottish body of water? No. I will give you guys my theory on dinosaurs at a later date. Stay tuned for that. Do I think every sighting is fake? Absolutely not. I think what we're seeing is a mixture of maybe some misidentifications, some spiritual warfare, some environmental conditions, and partly some of it could be our imagination, like filling in the blanks of what we're seeing. But the part that does interest me is this. We don't fully know what's in the deepest parts of our water on Earth. And we never really have definitively been able to prove or disprove large beasts or anything like that down below. And I think that's why stories like the Loch Ness really stick with people, because they sit right at the edge of kind of like what we know and what we don't know. Also, if Nessie is real, she's honestly doing better than all of us because she's unbothered, she's not dealing with people, she's hydrated, she's thriving, and she's popular. Like, she doesn't even have to try. So, yeah, maybe middle school me wasn't completely wrong about this theory, and we just don't have the capability to research it really any further. Just hearsay and stories and, first, secondhand stories. But this is just the beginning, because next video, I think we're going to dive into something even bigger, maybe with a big foot. And that one is going to be crazy because there's going to be so much more details and theories, and it's going to get weird. So I really appreciate you guys watching. I thank you so, so much for tuning in. And I really want to do more of these, way more in detail. So if you liked it, give me a big thumbs up and tell me, do you believe in the Loch Ness Monster? Okay, bye.